John Jones versus Stipe Miocic is coming up in November in New York, and that's going to be a hell of a card. It's going to be a hell of a fight. A fight where you have, the second best heavyweight of all time, Stipe Miocic. The first is Francis Ngannou. And then you have John Jones, the best fighter of all time. Then they're going to collide in a retirement fight. So John Jones right now is looking ridiculously strong. There's a picture of him on Instagram where he just got done training. His legs look huge. He looks massive. He looks super strong. Stipe hasn't fought since Ngannou knocked him out. I think John Jones is going to run through Stipe. And that's crazy to say, but I think John Jones is going to run through him. I think it's going to be bad. John Jones is the best fighter of all time in MMA. There's a narrative that John Jones isn't that good because of guys like MMA Guru. Get out of here. I remember watching John Jones fight for the first time in the UFC 100, I believe. What was it, UFC 100? It was UFC 95 or UFC 100. It was been so many fights in so many years and living this game, loving this game. It's kind of all blending together. But anyways, I remember watching John Jones when he was coming up. He was like 21 years old, wrecking everybody. The reason that, there's so many new people in the game who watch fights and they don't really understand how good John Jones is or who he really even is. John Jones beat so many champions. He beat TRT Vitor. You understand? TRT Vitor is like the most feared fighter in the fight game back in those days. If any of you guys were watching the fights back in those days, you guys know how dangerous TRT Vitor was. He kicked out Michael Bisping's eye. You know what I'm saying? He's the reason Michael Bisping has one eye. TRT Vitor head kicked Luke Rockhold with a spin kick. TRT Vitor was a different animal. John Jones almost got his arm broken in that fight, came back, whooped his ass, submitted him. John Jones was a white belt submitting black belts. John Jones was doing things that had never been seen before in the cage up to that moment. He had Stephen Bonner's leg spun around, hit him with an elbow. This was back in the day. Nowadays, maybe it's not that crazy to see a flying knee. But John Jones opened up his fight with Shogun, championship fight with the flying knee. You know what I'm saying? Shogun was an extremely dangerous fighter. Shogun went and he had a war with Dan Henderson. 2 wars with Dan Henderson. Go back and watch those fights. If you don't know who Shogun is, Lyoto Machida, when John Jones beat Lyoto Machida was seen to be as this mythical figure who's just going to whoop everybody's ass, and he chokes him out, drops his body, when Lyoto Machida is an incredible fighter. The list goes on. His fights with Alexander Gustafsson, his fights with his fight with Daniel Cormier. He had incredible fights and he beat Olympic wrestlers in their own game. You know what I'm saying? His fight with Glover Teixeira, who Glover ended up becoming the champion. Who Glover beat. Glover didn't beat Yuri Prochazka. Yuri Prochazka beat Glover, but he had a war and he was beating Yuri Prochazka. So John Jones's reign at light heavyweight extended through multiple different generations of the fight game in the UFC, which has never been done before. John Jones can say he beat guys who were fighting, in the damn near 90s, and he could beat guys who were fighting today who became champion. John Jones is a different animal. John Jones whooped Ryan Bader's ass. Ryan Bader became PFL champion. You know what I'm saying? John Jones is the best fighter in the game, period. And people have to respect his lineage and what he's done in the fight game. You know what I'm saying? Because it hasn't been done. He beat Rashad Evans. He beat Rampage Jackson. He beat Shogun Rua. He beat Vitor Belfort. He beat Lyoto Machida. You know what I'm saying? He beat Alexander Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson retired. John Jones is still in the game. He beat so many guys. The fight that I wish we would have been able to see is, rest in peace, Anthony Johnson, but that would have been an incredible fight if they would have been able to make that happen. It would have really been a special fight. Anthony Johnson was an incredible fighter back in his day, just an incredible knockout artist, giant guy, super strong, ruthless, brutal athlete, incredible fighter. He passed away, but him and John Jones were scheduled to fight at one point, and it didn't happen. But with all due respect, I believe John Jones would have beat him as well. I believe John Jones runs through Stipe quickly and just in fashion that we've never seen before for multiple reasons. Stipe hasn't fought in 3 years. He could have been training the entire 3 years and getting better, but last time he was in the cage, he got knocked out by Francis Ngannou brutally, brutally. So that's going to be in his mind stepping to that cage. And, we all know this is his last fight. And we all know this is potentially John Jones' last fight, unless he gets the Francis fight. So you're walking to that cage, you're fighting John Jones. You know what I'm saying? You're in the cage with John Jones. All the highlights come back. Him dropping people, him just ruthlessly ground and pounding people, him brutalizing Chael Sonnen on the ground. John Jones is a highlight reel machine, and he's a really special fighter that, regardless of the controversies he's had with the steroids and the drunk driving and all the outside of the cage shenanigans, you cannot disrespect and disregard what he's achieved in the game. And he's the best fighter that we've ever seen. And he's given us time after time after time amazing moments. What he did to Ciryl Gane, So John Jones is just an incredible fighter in a class of his own. He's the Michael Jordan of our sport. And Daniel Cormier saying that he's not, I think that's just a little bit of bitterness. I like Daniel Cormier a lot, but you can't really say John Jones isn't. And maybe he was on steroids for a lot of those fights. But also during that time, a lot of people are on steroids. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to say, but John Jones is the best fighter that we've ever seen. Mighty Mouse is also an incredible fighter, but the problem is Mighty Mouse is a smaller guy, so he doesn't have the same allure of the big guys. Floyd Mayweather, incredible fighter, but he's never going to have the same allure of someone like Muhammad Ali, someone like Sonny Liston, someone like the bigger guys. We care about the big boys. You know what I'm saying? We want to know who the big dude is and who runs the game, because we know if John Jones and Mighty Mouse fights, what's going to happen. So John Jones is the best fighter. I believe he's going to absolutely destroy Stipe, and it's going to be a glorious moment for Jones. If Stipe is a dog, though, you cannot underestimate him. But I just believe that, with all things considered, last time Stipe fought was against Francis, and we have to also give Stipe his flowers, because he fought Francis, beat him the first time, and he is an incredible heavyweight. So maybe I'm wrong for saying that John Jones is going to run through Stipe. Stipe is that weathered lion who's been through wars and who's been in the game a long time and who's a real dog. But I believe John Jones is a different stratosphere of fighter, and I believe John Jones is going to go out there and do what he always does. And if he doesn't get the Francis fight, well, I believe he's going to get the Francis fight. I believe he will get that fight. And hopefully Francis wins his fight against Renan Ferreira, and they make that fight. Biggest fight in MMA history. John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. The best heavyweight of all time fighting the best fighter of all time. And they collide and they see what happens. And if they fight, I got Francis winning. Even though I love John Jones. John Jones is my favorite fighter other than Francis. And I'm not like a fanboy by any stretch of the imagination, but John Jones is a guy that I was watching growing up and inspired me a lot, growing up. So many training sessions I went to because of John Jones and just watching him on the prime time. He's given MMA such great moments, and he's really built the UFC. And when you look throughout his entire career, he's just had an incredible career. I believe he should retire after this fight. He really should, because you've done a lot. It's been an amazing career. If you get the Francis fight, then he should do it. But John Jones' career is one that I don't think ever will be touched again. And he is the best fighter in the game. You put him in there with Fedor, he beats Fedor. You put him in there with everybody except for Francis, he beats him. And, it's very weird to see people trying to retroactively down his accomplishments. John Jones is the best, period, bar none, and that's it. John Jones is going to knock out Stipe, brutal fashion.